Today I'm playing with this adorable special delivery stamp set from Trinity Stamps' last release, and I'm going to be doing some no-line colouring. Hey crafty people, it's Tash here. Welcome back to my channel. If you like this video then please do give me a thumbs up, and if you aren't already subscribed I would absolutely love it if you could hit that button. So I've already loaded the cute little male bear image into my MISTI. I'm not using the other two images today, just that one. So I've loaded that up in my MISTI and I'm going to stamp it with some of the InkOn3 Fadeout No Line Colouring Ink. At the same time I've also stamped my sentiment out using Altenew Obsidian. So I'm going to be doing a little bit of no line colouring today, and there was a time when no line colouring really scared me. Not like scared like Halloween scared, like intimidated. Maybe that's a better way of saying it. There was a time that it really intimidated me because I thought that you had to be really, really good, and I was just a bit nervous to try it. So I wanted to include this today to show you that you don't have to be like a classically trained artist to get the no line colouring look. So I stamped it twice with the fade out ink so that I had got some really good bold lines there, because otherwise I just can't see it. And then I got to colouring. I'll add all of the Copic markers that I used so that you can see, and if you want to you can use some of those colour combinations as well. But basically with no line colouring, what you need to remember is the no line bit is a little bit misleading, I think, because it just means that you've not got the strong black or whatever colour stamped lines. So the best way to go about trying to get a no line coloured look is to first of all use a good ink, which this really is. I love it. It's the first time that I've used it. In love with it. So happy with it. And the next thing to do is I take the lightest or medium colour, depending on how many colours I'm fitting in. Most of the time here I'm only using 3 colours really to blend because they are quite small areas. So I would take the middle colour and outline the section that I'm going to be colouring. So I'm kind of adding those lines back in, but not in the same way. So I think that was my sort of worry about it at first, that, you know, there couldn't be any lines, but that's not what it means. So you just add the lines yourself, but using the colour that you're going to be colouring that area in with, so you can see all of the details of the image, but you've not got that harsh stamped line. So here on the shirt as well, there's lots of different areas and different folds that can be quite intimidating. So I just made sure that, you know, his arm there where he's got it bent, I really got the shadow in that, the depth of shadow in that, by using the darkest marker on his shirt where the shadow would be falling. So after I'd finished the shirt and I did the hat as well, but I just did that in the same colours that I did the trousers. I then moved on to work on his face, and I'm not going to lie, this bit was the hardest, which I wasn't expecting. I thought that the most difficult part would be like getting the detail in the shirt, but because there's that sort of large open space, it's trying to get a shape in that without the stamped image. So I outlined all of his face, including his cute nose, with the medium brown, and then I went back round and I used my darkest brown on the edges of everything, because his face is going to be, it would be rounded, so you're going to have shadow towards the edges of his face and highlight in the centre. but that cute nose would be throwing a bit of a shadow onto his face, so we need to make sure that we add some dark around the outside of his nose, so where it's still his face but meeting his nose, because like I said, yeah, that would be throwing some shadow, and then his nose generally is going to be quite a bright area. So I just added the colours where I thought they needed to be, and then I just went over it a couple of times to make sure that I'd really got that blend in nicely, and got the shadow that I needed to have, just to give his face a little bit of depth and dimension. Now, the fade out ink really does disappear completely when you colour into it. So his face had completely gone. I knew that it was going to go, but man, that ink really works well. It really does disappear. I wasn't too worried though, because I had the stamp packaging to hand, so I did just grab that out to help me position my cutesy bear's eyes and mouth back in. Made sure to add some shadow around his hat as well, especially the brim of his hat, that would be throwing some shadow. But when I'm colouring, generally, I don't worry too much about a light source, unless there is a light source as part of a scene that I'm colouring. Then I don't worry too much about where the light source would be, and I just put a shadow and highlight where I think that it would look good, where I think it would work. So yeah, here I am adding in his mouth and his eyes. I'm really quite happy with how that came out, the face. Like I said, I wasn't expecting it, but that was probably the most difficult. So once I made the end of his nose a little bit darker as well. That's just, he's just so cute, this bear. I love him. Next up, I went to do his bag. So I'm using the cool greys here, and I outlined it all with my lightest grey that I was going to be using. Made sure to leave that little badge area clear, because I'll be colouring that in afterwards. And then once I'd got the colour in place, I went around the edges of the bag with my darkest grey, because again, to give it some depth, it would be rounded, so we need to add some shadow onto the edges of the bag, and we're going to have some highlighted areas on the main bulk of the bag. But this bag is full of letters, maybe parcels, so it's not going to be completely flat. I wanted it to look like it was a bit bumpy and full up, so I did add a few lines with my darkest marker, and then blend those out a little bit, just to give the bag a little bit of texture, to look like it, like I said, look like it had got a lot of stuff inside. Then I wanted the little badges to look a bit like silver, so I just coloured those in with a lighter grey, and I added the mail back onto the bag. I just did that with my darkest grey Copic, and added some of the little details to the badge again with a darker grey Copic. So for the letters, I'm using the warm greys, and this sort of shows you just how much of a difference there is between the cool and the warm greys, because if you've not used them or seen them before, you might think, quite rightly, that it's just grey, what's the difference? But there really is a huge difference. The warm greys are more like almost creamy in some places, and it's really handy to have more than one, because you can use them, like here, if I'd made my letters if I'd shaded my letters in with cool grey, you wouldn't have been able to tell where the letter ended and where the bag began. So that's why it's handy to have both sets. So I just added some shading, added a little heart and squiggles as if it's an address. So I cut out this panel, I can't remember which size it was, but I will have it linked. It was one of the new nested stitched mini Slimline dies. So I cut it from white, and I just wanted to add a little bit of interest to the background, but whilst keeping this very clean and simple. So I just grabbed out my T-square ruler and a black fine liner, and I'm just literally adding some lines to the background. So I've got them sort of all intersecting at a certain point. That point was not chosen for anything in particular, other than I just thought that that was a nice place to have them intersecting. And literally I just drew a few lines. And then you might recognise this if you've seen my previous videos. That rainbow was cut from one of the pattern papers. I cut that I was matting the paper, so I cut some circles out of the middle so that I wasn't going to lose all of that beautiful paper. So I've popped my bear onto that with some foam squares, and then I'm gluing that onto the white Slimline panel, and I did decide to end up going over the bit where they intersected because I just thought that that was a cool place to go. I also die cut the sentiment. Yeah, I die cut my bear and I die cut the sentiment, stuck that on, and then I'm going to stick that on to a black die cut, which is the next size up in the Slimline nested die set. But again, from that black one, I cut the centre out of it so that I wasn't wasting that glossy black paper. So I grabbed out these are sending mail, I think. I will double check. Set of embellishments, and I just added a few of those all around. So that's my finished card. I hope that you like it. I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I hope that you'll give nail line colouring a go if you've never tried it before. If you like my video, then please give me a thumbs up. It really does help me out. And if you aren't already subscribed, I'd love it if you would please consider hitting that button. And if you hit the notification bell, then you'll be notified every time a new video uploads, and you won't ever miss one, because they are a bit sporadic at the moment while I work out my new schedule due to new design team commitments. So I hope that you have a lovely, happy, safe, wonderful week. Stay crafty. Bye.